everyone, it's Jack from Cultaholic.com and it's time to talk about AEW Dynamite, or as Hangman Page said on Twitter, All Elite. He says, I can't believe you guys are calling it AEW, why don't you just call it All Elite? And I thought, yeah, that is less of a mouthful, isn't it? But it's too late now, everyone just calls it AEW. Sorry, Hangman. Anyway, without any further ado, let's see how good this week's show was, emanating from Dallas, Texas. I've got a little soft spot for Dallas. It was the first place I ever went to in the States, and it's just bloody lovely, isn't it? Your mileage may vary if you're from there, but from an outsider's point of view, it was pretty decent. Let's see how good the show was, and let's assign each individual segment a lovely individual grade. That's right, it's time for AEW Dynamite Graded. We start off the show hot with Jon Moxley making his entrance. He's got a singles match against Reynolds. No prizes for guessing who won this one, and no prizes for guessing that the match didn't actually last that long at all either. Reynolds has only really competed in tag matches alongside the likes of John Silver, his regular tag partner, and I think they also tagged with Cutie Marshal at one point as well, and they lose every time. And Reynolds lost this one in probably under 10 seconds, just an immediate knee to the face, paradigm shift, and Jon Moxley picks up another win. John Silver jumps in the ring and tries to jump Moxley from behind, but he gets a paradigm shift too, and then here comes Chris Jericho and the Inner Circle. But only Jericho gets in the ring, the rest of them just surround it, making sure that Moxley should think twice before trying to get away. Jericho talks about the history between himself and Moxley. Obviously, they did feud back in WWE, but he goes back even further and says, when you were coming up, John, you asked me for advice on how to get over, how to become a star, and then you did become a star. Then we became adversaries and we kicked the crap out of each other. He says that Moxley threw Jericho into thumbtacks and Jericho hit Moxley with a 50-pound piece of crockery, which I think was a nice reference to Mitch, the potted plant, and I'm delighted to see that referenced in the AEW canon. Can we in fact get a Mitch 2 please to accompany Jon Moxley? No, in fact no. I prefer the more serious Moxley. Let's not go down that dark path again. Jericho then takes credit for navigating Moxley to AEW and says that Moxley repaid him and thanked him by laying him out at Double or Nothing. But he says that's okay. It means, yes, that Jon Moxley is still an arsehole, but he says also it means that he's still a winner. But he says that Moxley still needs Chris Jericho and offers him a place in the Inner Circle. And everyone's like, ooh, obviously nobody wants Moxley to, but it's an intriguing little wrinkle in the storyline. He even gives him a t-shirt, lays it over his shoulder and says, look, I know this isn't a decision to be made quickly. Talk it over with your family, enjoy the holiday season, and get back to me when you're ready. Seems a little bit like when LeBron James went and joined the Miami Heat alongside Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. Seems a little bit overpowered, seems a little bit unfair if Moxley were indeed to join the Inner Circle, but I don't really think for a second that he is going to. This gets a B+ grade. The opening match was pretty uneventful, but it got the crowd off to a nice hot start. The crowd were pretty good all the way through the night actually, and then Jericho's promo was good as well. I can't actually see Moxley, as I said, joining the Inner Circle, but I can see him pretending to, only to turn the tables on Jericho when he least expects it. And maybe even the same week that he pretends to join will be the week when he turns on him. I can't see him doing a whole pretending, like Randy Orton style Wyatt family thing. I can see it more as an Austin thing, when he pretended to sign the SmackDown contract and then sign the Raw one and everything. Maybe he'll throw Jericho into a body of water if it takes place on the Jericho cruise. That would be lovely. That would be a fun little angle, wouldn't it? Anyway, B+ for the segment. The match was okay. It was just like 5 seconds long, but the promo was pretty enjoyable. Next up, tag team action. The Butcher and the Blade, accompanied by the Bunny, taking on Cody and Cutie Marshal. The partner, of course, was chosen by the Butcher and the Blade, and MJF reveals in a little box-in-box promo that it was actually him pulling the strings behind the decision. The babyface's entrance really makes me laugh because first you've got Cody with all the introduction and the fanfare and the lights and everything and the song, and then Cutie Marshal just walks out of one of the entrance ramps and just sort of joins him. That was pretty funny, but he does throw Cody the apple and Cody takes a bite. They're great friends, they're a great tag team. Give them a title shot already. The Butcher and the Blade are using heel tactics early on. Ali's on the outside, or the Bunny I should say, grabbing Cutie's feet to distract him, for example, or they run around the ring and yank Cody off the apron when he's about to get the hot tag. Classic sort of stuff, but it's executed and paced really well. And when the hot tag finally comes, in fairness, it's really, really electrifying. Cody is hitting moves left, right and centre. At one stage, he jumps on the middle turnbuckle and then without really using his hands, jumps and lands with both feet on the top rope and then leaps backwards into a nice cutter. Has he been training with Phoenix or something, Cody? Calm down. Do you want to get Wrestlers of the Week points or something, mate? But with the referee distracted, the Bunny reaches through the ropes and rakes Cody's eyes. That forces Cutie Marshal to tag back in because Cody can't see. And it's time for QT to absolutely run wild. And the crowd are pretty hot for him, to be fair. He hits some unique offense, such as a cartwheel into a Not a tope. Adam Pacitti described it as like a self-Royal Rumble elimination. So he hits a cartwheel in the ring and then just sort of tumbles himself over the top rope onto the heels. It's really funny and it works, I guess. It hits them. He also does a bit of a twisting swanton bomb kind of thing. Looks like he's nearly about to break his neck, but he lands it. It's all going pretty well. The crowd are all hot for him. And then the heels come back and win anyway, which is probably the right decision in fairness. This gets a B+ grade as well. I really enjoyed it for what it was, and they did a really good job of kind of making Cutie Marshal out to be a total jobber and a total loser. So that meant that whenever he did something good, whenever he was hitting offense, the crowd were really, really behind him. It's a good win for the Butcher and the Blade 2, for B&B, for Bed and Breakfast. Good win for Bed and Breakfast. And afterwards, Darby Allin storms out, helps Cody to his feet, and it looks like they've struck up a bit of an alliance. We'll see where this goes. Very interesting. Next up, it's a promo segment, and it's MJF and Wardlow, those bastards. MJF starts the promo by getting one of the cable runners outside the ring to come into the ring and basically says, I don't like you. You laughed at me last week when Cody insulted my Crossroads attempt. So all you can do, all's forgiven basically, is you just need to kiss the ring. Just kiss the Dynamite ring and then everything will be fine. And the guy really doesn't want to, but Wardlow's standing right behind him, so he kind of has to. But then, predictably, MJF goes back on his promise that everything will be forgiven. He just hits the guy with a crossroads, or a double cross, as MJF's version's called, and all the heat rains down. It's good stuff. MJF then cuts a promo on Cody. It's really, really good, as you might imagine. He even quotes, I think it's a Roddy Piper quote. He says, to quote a legend, you don't throw rocks at a man with a machine gun, which is a really nice line. He also says that he doesn't need Cody's money or gifts to have a match with him. All he needs is for Cody to suffer. He's also really annoyed because Cody called him a knockoff Chris Jericho, and he says that really, when he thinks of fake stuff, the first thing he thinks of is Cody Rhodes himself. And he says he thinks of, and let me just list these off, he thinks of that platinum blonde hair that looks like a cat pissed on it, he thinks of those beaver teeth you could land a helicopter on, and he thinks of his fake declaration that he cares about the fans. The only thing real about Cody is his little lisp. And then he says suffer and succotash. But it's good, it makes it work, it doesn't make the promo worse. Don't worry. I know that those words have since been associated with the failed push of Roman Reigns, but this is a heel doing it, so it's fine. But MJF, surprisingly actually, does say that he'll face Cody Rhodes, but he says that he'll only do it if certain stipulations are met. But he doesn't reveal what those are yet. He says he's going to reveal his conditions on January 1st. 2020. It's nearly 2020. We're nearly in a new decade, and I feel so old right now. This gets an A grade. It's a really, really strong promo segment. Not quite on the level of some of the best ones that Dynamite have brought us so far, from the likes of Cody and Chris Jericho. But this isn't me saying that I don't think MJF's capable of cutting one of those promos, like an A+ grade promo. To me, it's more just a case of when he's going to do so, because he is unbelievably good on the mic. Next up, we get a Dark Order video package. Alex Reynolds, the dude we just saw lose to Moxley in the opening match, is in his hotel room looking sad. He's just sat on the bed watching TV, and it's one of those hotel things where it's like, the concierge desk is open 24/7. There's extra toothpaste available if you are you tired of being a jobber, Alex? The TV's talking to him. Oh my God. Then his tag partner, John Silver, comes in. There's nobody told him that his name's a pirate's name. Anyway, John Silver comes in and says, who are you talking to? And he's like, I don't know, man. And that's the end. We'll see where it goes. But I'd like it if they joined the Dark Order. I think it would be good to give some of these kind of more gimmickless guys on the undercard more of a gimmick, essentially. I think it's a nice touch. This gets a B+ grade. I thought it was well done, and I like how they're giving everybody just the little beginnings of a storyline thread. It feels like everybody's got something to do, more like the Attitude Era days when everyone on the card had at least a minor storyline going on. They also plugged the website www.joindarkorder.com, where there's a sign-up sheet, which I'm tempted to do and give you updates on what the hell happens, because I'm not a wrestler, but jobber's in my name. I am tired of being a jobber. Should I do it? Let me know what you think in the comments down below, please. Next up, women's division action with Big Swole, who's recently just signed full-time with AEW, taking on Emi Sakura. This match had good points and bad points. At times it felt a little bit slow and there were a few tiny miscommunications here and there. But on the positive side, Big Swole was clearly trying to impress a lot on her debut and showed a hell of a lot of charisma. It was also a pretty back and forth match. The action was swinging backwards and forwards between both women. Both got a chance to show off their offense as well, which was nice to see. And Tony was just having a great time on commentary, wasn't he? There was some interplay with Emi Sakura's mic stand where basically Big Swole managed to get it off her and did sort of a cool drop-down dance move thing that I couldn't even begin to imagine being able to do. And then, as someone on commentary said, can't remember, she got down like James Brown, and then Tony jumped in and went, do you think she feels good? And there was just silence from the other two, and they were like, you alright there, Tony? Tony's having a great time, you can't argue with that. Eventually, Big Swole does get the big victory over a more established member of the AEW women's division, hitting Emi Sakura with the Dirty Dancing. It's kind of a Rainmaker setup, and then it becomes a discus forearm or right hand. It's pretty good, and it gets her the win. I was going to give this a B- grade because it was a little bit lethargic at times, but I do appreciate the effort both women put in, and they packed a lot into this match. And I also thought the decision to give Big Swole the win was a good one. So I'll bump it up to a B grade, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing what Big Swole does in the future. Next up, tag team action with Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page taking on Kip Sabian, accompanied by Penelope Ford, and Shawn Spears, not accompanied by Tully Blanchard. Mysterious. Okay, right, let's make one thing very clear right now, okay? Kip Sabian, as a fellow Englishman, I've heard of this place, I've never been, but he's from a place called Galston in Norfolk. Norfolk is pronounced Norfolk. I would understand if an American said Norfolk by accident because of how it's spelled, Norfolk, but it's actually Norfolk. Justin Roberts did not pronounce it as Galston, Norfolk, nor did he pronounce it as Galston, Norfolk. He pronounced it as Galston, Norfolk, I think. And I don't know where he's got that from, but it certainly makes Kip Sabian sound a lot more exotic and mysterious than he is, because he comes from a place that doesn't exist. This one's a pretty back and forth match as well, but Penelope Ford keeps tipping the balance in the heel's favour, flying around with Hurricane Ranas and stuff whenever the referee's back is turned, and she executes everything really, really well. But just as the heel team look really about to press their advantage, the lights go down, and when they come back up, Joey Janela's on the ramp with Tully Blanchard tied to a steel chair. It's kind of a subversion of Shawn Spears' normal entrance, isn't it, guys? It's cool, it's artsy, it's deep. No, okay, it's not very deep, but it is effective because Shawn Spears immediately abandons the match, runs over to free Tully Blanchard, and brawls with Joey Janela to the back. This, of course, leaves the man from Norfolk alone in the ring, and Kenny Omega hits the V-trigger, but before he can hit the One-Winged Angel and finish off Kip Sabian, Hangman Page blind tags in, jumps over the top rope, and drops him with the Buckshot Lariat and picks up the victory himself for the babyface team. This gets a B grade. It was a good match, but it was all about the storyline developments going forwards as well. Obviously, the continuation of the feud between Spears and Janela, and also the slight possibility of a Hangman Page heel turn, something that, to be honest, I wouldn't be against. Next up, we have a video promo from Brandi Rhodes, and it's another promo for the Nightmare Collective. Spooky times at All Elite High. Or at least it's meant to be spooky, but before we get to really spooky stuff, Brandy decides to shoot on people like Cody and Jericho and MJF have been doing, but I don't know if it fits her current gimmick at the minute. She calls, for example, Riho so small that you can't even see her because she hasn't been around for the past few weeks to defend her AEW Women's Championship. Shooting from the hip, Brandy, but not really spooky, not in line with what you've been trying to do recently. She also has a go at Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, saying, wow, look at how often she mentions her boyfriend. Her boyfriend, of course, is the NXT champion Adam Cole in WWE. And Brandy's like, look how often she mentions her. You're nothing but a pathetic groupie. And I'm like, Jesus, Brandy, calm down. But Brandy does say that the offer for Kris Statlander to join the group still stands. And she says, we're waiting for you. Just let us know when. And then she almost reveals this mysterious figure sat next to her, a new member of the group, a man with a shaven head, but we don't quite see who it is, and she makes the camera go away. Now, honestly, I really didn't enjoy this. I'm going to give it a C- grade. Let me explain why. First of all, I thought it was well produced, and I thought it was well performed by Brandy. She is a good promo, but it's the content of the promo that I had a problem with. You see, like, those shots at Riho and Britt Baker are a little bit damaging in my opinion. The golden rule of promos is that no matter what you say about your opponent, you always try and build them up in some way, because otherwise when you come to beat them, or better them in some way, when you come to win the feud, it means less, because you've beaten someone that you've said is trash. And if they beat you, then you've been beaten by someone that you say is trash, and that doesn't always work. Chris Jericho is a really good example, because he puts over everybody he feuds with. Even if he's meant to hate them, he still finds a good aspect and begrudgingly admits it to the crowd. You could say that in Cody's promos, he has sort of slightly tried to betray MJF, but that comes from a real place of hatred and betrayal, so I can understand that. And earlier on in this episode, we saw MJF get a chance to fire back at Cody, so that's not too egregious either. But in this case, I can't really see Riho getting on the mic and being like, yeah, I'm small, well, you're this and you're that. I don't even know if Britt Baker will get a chance to fire back. It just seems like Brandy was taking shots for no real reason other than to prove that she can. Anyway, back to the ring now, and back to singles action with Luchasaurus taking on Sammy Guevara. And Jericho and Jake Hager jump the commentary table. They make Excalibur and Tony Schiavone get out of there, and they sit down next to good old JR. Jericho is livid with Excalibur, by the way. He mentions this on air because he says that Excalibur was wrong last week. He said that Jericho did not understand the meaning of lexicon, and Jericho says he does understand the meaning of lexicon and then provides a definition which I honestly didn't know existed. He really delved into the etymology of the word, and I appreciate that, you know. Well done, Chris, doing your research. This is a fairly short match, but it's a good one, it's entertaining, with Luchasaurus' power and size and strikes going up against Sammy Guevara's nimbleness and agility, and also sneakiness as well. But Luchasaurus polishes him off with the flapjack tombstone, I think it's called. You know that finisher that he does, where he's got them in the tombstone position and then throws them outwards and they take a front bump. That's enough to pin Sammy Guevara, but Jericho and Jake Hager rush the ring. Hager brawls with Luchasaurus on the outside while Jericho's in the ring, and Jungle Boy just goes for him because obviously he's got that match against Jericho next week. He goes for it. He hits him with a Hurricane Rana kind of cradle, a bit like Rey Mysterio, and Marco Stunt climbs in the ring and counts the visual pinfall, and everyone's like, "Oi, Jungle Boy's got a pinfall on Jericho." Obviously it's not an official pinfall, but it's nice to see. It's a nice development for their match next week. This gets a B+. The match itself was probably a B. It was actually quite short. It may have even been a B-, but I'm bumping it up to a B+ because I really enjoyed the aftermath, and I really enjoyed Chris Jericho on commentary. He did exactly what I talked about just before. Even though he hates Luchasaurus and he's a rival of his, he did not hesitate at any point to put him over when he was on offense. He was going, "Oh God, look out, Sammy," or, you know, he'd take a big boot and Jericho would be saying, "Well, that's a 6'7" man planting his boot in your face. That's gonna hurt a lot." Those little things can help get a new star over so quickly. Just before we talk about the main event, AEW also announced the next pay-per-view, which takes place on February 29th. I didn't even remember that next year was a leap year, but now I guess I do, with Revolution emanating from Chicago, Illinois. And finally, the main event, a Texas street fight, no DQ, with the Young Bucks taking on Santana and Ortiz, and the winners face SCU for the titles. This gets off to a really hot start, and the match doesn't really slow down at any point from then on. This was a very fast-paced and intense match with lots of silly weapon spots, and it was just really good fun. The Proud and Powerful jump the Young Bucks during their entrance. Brandon Cutler runs out to try and help his boys and gets put through the stage, or thrown off the stage through a table or something. He gets really hurt by Santana and Ortiz. Sammy Guevara is still hanging around near the entranceway from his match with Luchasaurus just before as well, and it makes sense that he would just get involved because it's the inner circle. He needs to help his boys. I like little touches like that. It makes it all feel a little bit more real, but Sammy's interference doesn't help for very long because the Young Bucks take control and hit him with an Indie Taker near the entranceway on like the ramp. It looks pretty good, and it takes Sammy out of commission. But the Young Bucks come back and they get in control again. This is a really breathless start to the match, and they haven't even got down to ringside yet, with the Young Bucks putting Ortiz on a table, Nick Jackson heading up to the top of one of the entranceways and just leaping off and crushing Ortiz through the table. But Ortiz kicks out at 2. I can kind of forgive it though. I know he just got put through a table with a huge spot, but it is the very start of the match. We finally get down to ringside, and Matt and Nick Jackson have a little argument with SCU, who are watching from the front row, which is nice to see, but that does give Santana and Ortiz an opportunity to recover and get back into the match. They isolate Nick Jackson, put a trash can over his head, and just start battering it with weapons, which everyone loves that spot. The old Steve Blackman goodness still lives on in 2019. But then Matt Jackson slides in the ring, and somewhere he's found a Dallas Cowboys helmet. He puts it on and uses it to turn the tide. They're like trying to punch him and like selling the hand and stuff. It's classic stuff. But one thing I'm going to say is, isn't Tony Khan a little bit annoyed? Aren't all AEW roster members contractually obliged to be fans of the Jacksonville Jaguars? Nick hits a 450 from the top rope onto a trash can. 1, 2, and Jake Hager's down at ringside to pull the referee out. Nick looks really annoyed. He goes to kick Jake Hager from the apron. Jake Hager moves, and the referee takes the boot full in the face. The Bucks hit more bang for your buck, but there's no referee, of course, to count the pinfall until Aubrey runs down, doing a Charles Robinson, but the ramp's nowhere near as long. She gets in the ring, 1, 2, and it's only enough for a near fall. Santana and Ortiz then hit a big double team move on Matt Jackson. It looks like they're about to win the match, but then Nick pulls Aubrey out from the outside because there's no rules. He can do what he wants. Yes, he's a babyface, but it really shows the desperation. And also, he's just getting his own back for what the heels did earlier. Santana gets knocked off the apron through a table, and now Ortiz is isolated in the ring. The Bucks hit a chair-assisted super kick on him, and then the Melter driver, and that's enough for the 3 count. And they are the new #1 contenders. This gets an A- grade. I really enjoyed it. It was a fun and chaotic match. It wasn't structured enough, or it didn't have enough substance, I guess, to be an A or an A+ grade, but it was a really fun and hot ending to the show. Overall, I'm going to give this show a B+, verging on an A-, but I'm going to give it a B+. I thought the MJF promo and the main event were really, really enjoyable, and I thought that everything else on the show pretty much was very consistent. There were very few segments on this show that I didn't enjoy, so it was a consistently very good show, but not quite reaching that top tier of Dynamite episodes that we've seen in the past. Thanks very much for watching, and let us know what you think in the comments section down below. You can follow Cultaholic on Twitter at Cultaholic and on Facebook at facebook.com/Cultaholic. If you enjoy what we do, then please do check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Cultaholic, where you can pledge. And don't forget, of course, most importantly of all, to hit subscribe and to join us.